Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Those who are staying, please come forward. That would be better. As much as you can. Otherwise, if you're uncomfortable, you stay where you are. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa alihi wa ashabihi wa man walah. Allahumma aftah masami'a qulubina li dhikrik. Ya Allah, please open the hearing channels of our hearts to your dhikr, to that which reminds us of you. Allahumma ja'alna min alladhina yastami'una al-qawla fayattabi'una ahsanah. Ya Allah, please help us be of those who listen to the words of admonition and follow the best of them. Ameen. Is there any question first regarding some of the things we have talked about before? Who remembers what we covered last time? What we talked about last session? So in the circumstance of al-muhkam and al-mutashabih,
No.
how does Hawa come here as an example? When will it be Hawa? When will it be as an example of following our Hawa in the case of a choice between muhkam and mutashabih? To all of you. It's not an example. What's following Hawa in this case? Tons of examples. They are all under the umbrella of al-muhkam wal-mutashabih. So here's an issue in which there is something muhkam about it and something mutashabih about it.
No.
When will it be following Hawa? Give me a sentence, full sentence, I don't know. Don't speak to me in bites, because incomplete sentences, I don't know what you mean by them.
Okay, following Hawa, I think, is mutashabih.
What do you mean following Hawa is mutashabih?
That means when you do this between two muhkam and mutashabih, between those two, one is close to Hawa, is mutashabih.
Meaning, when will you be following your Hawa if you do what in this case?
Like for instance,
Or if you do what in this case?
like Christianity,
If you do what in this case?
Mutashabih, if
That's all it is. So I want to see if you understood. So muhkam mutashabih, we understood what it is. There are examples, khalas, we gave examples. Now, when will I be following my Hawa in this case? If between a muhkam and mutashabih, I make the choice of mutashabih.
No.
And those are examples.
No.
But then this is very generic. Then you can find out many examples by yourself when you understand the rule. Obviously, mutashabih is as defined and muhkam is as defined. If one goes and follows on an issue a muhkam answer or a mutashabih answer, he follows the mutashabih answer instead of the muhkam answer, this person is definitely following his or her Hawa, whoever they may be and they claim. For example, so that's what, as a conclusion we wanted to understand, for instance, an example of ittiba'ul Hawa. Let's not just speak about them generally, but because the application of that, as we will find out, many of us do follow our Hawa. No, muhkam and mutashabih are not two types of people.
Different things.
Muhkam and mutashabih are two types of evidence, two types of texts, two types of logic. Muhkam is that evidence, that logic, that text which is definitively, conclusively, unambiguously clear. The meaning of which, as you said, the ulama are very clear about. They don't differ. Mutashabih is something that is very ambiguous in terms of what it could mean. Or in terms of what it could mean. For instance, ambiguous, very, not only, it's more than ambiguous. Mutashabih, very unsettled meaning. It could mean many things. It could mean many things. Mutashabih from the meaning of semblance and resemblance. In other words, there are many things, many meanings that resemble one another to be perhaps the meaning of the text. That's what mutashabih, many ones. Versus muhkam, definitive, one, conclusive, no other possibility. And mutashabih is many possible meanings. So if one comes on an issue in which there is a text or an evidence that is muhkam, clear, definitive, that this is what it means, and through another type of text, that same concept may mean this or this or this or this or this. Then one goes and picks one of those or two of those and says this is what it means, disregarding the muhkam. That's following my hawa. For example, if this is not clear to you after we gave the example in the Bible and in some of the issues of Shara, we'll take this for example. And I think I did mention something close to that. For example, in the Quran, it says that Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. One comes and says, well, Allah says here, اجتنبوه, assuming this person, just for the sake of going along with the argument. He says, nowhere does Allah Azza wa Jalla says it is haram. Nowhere does it say it is haram. In other words, the word haram to him must exist, and therefore that's muhkam. He says, no, I didn't say it. Nowhere does it say it's haram. Then he says, ijtanibu, it says, in other words, he would understand, ijtanibu, just keep away from it. In other words, he takes it like, keep away from it. The way you put it, keep away from it. In other words, it's not haram. Just keep away from it. Assume we go along with that, which is, of course, in the logic of the Arabic language, that's not what it means. But what about the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the many hadith about this issue, sahih wa mutawatir ila dhalik, about the punishment of those who perform khamr, about the la'na, the curse, literally, directly, the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon those who drink it, upon those who carry it, upon those who sell it, upon those who buy it. This is definitive, muhkam in meaning. That he would ignore these things and goes, well, see, it said only ijtanibuhu. This is ittiba'u al-hawa. It's not a person who is following the logic and the strength of the logic of the argument. But this person, that's a sign, even if he or she doesn't know. That's how we know, and those who don't know, that this person, or I, wal-iyad billah, are following their hawa. Because the hawa is always inconsistent, unsustainable logically, and inconsistent rationally. Always. For example, here it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example, يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ والسماء خلقناها والسماء بنيناها بأيد وإنا لموسعون. When Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned the word hand in this context of these ayat, for example, then one would say, well, hands, this is hand. So God has a hand, and the only way I know hand is hand, so hand is hand, his hand. That's what it says. So he says, well, it says hand, so this is hand. Now this here, as the ulama expert all agree, this is mutashabih. What does hand mean here and imply here and connotate here? Well, this is mutashabih in accordance to the greatest, earliest majorities of the expert ulama, rahmahullah ta'ala. What do other ayat tell us, which are ignored here for that person who does that? And there have been people like this in Islamic history, and maybe there are still. Allah ta'ala. What is muhkam about the other ayat? لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. But Allah has said, what is the muhkam, that which is clear, definitive in what it means here. He did say, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is nothing, or no one, or nothing comparable to Him Azza wa Jalla. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. So when he says hand, no, stop. Just read لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. Don't give it a meaning and a modality which makes Him therefore in some way even like something else created. Because He said clearly لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. This is muhkam. And the hand in there is mutashabih. And that is, of course, alhamdulillah, the understanding of Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that when these attributes come, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. You cannot envision that, and you cannot compare that to anything that you know in the creation. That you know, or that you envision, or that you even model, or that you conceive of, even intellectually. You cannot do that. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ is muhkam. The ayat of the sifat specific are mutashabih. Mutashabih. Because Allah speaks of both. And He says in the Quran, مِنْهُ آيَاتٌ مُحْكَمَاتٌ هُنَّ أُمُّ الْكِتَابِ. The ayat, the verses that are muhkam, are the mother of the book. And others, mutashabihat. And Allah wanted it to be that way. Mutashabihat. And then He says to us, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ. And that's Hawa. Zayr meaning inclination, male. As to those in whose hearts there is zayr, that is male inclination, Hawa, فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ. Those who are like that, they follow the mutashabih instead of the muhkam. Instead of understanding the mutashabih in the light of the muhkam, they do the opposite. That's why I gave an example of in the Bible, in our opinion. When, you go to the overwhelming evidence that means something, you ignore that and you take a small sort of insignificant type of, in terms of magnitude of evidence, and you understand the big evidence in the light of the small evidence, meaning you subject the big obvious evidence and meaning to the ambiguous, unclear meaning. And you understand the unambiguous very clear in the light of the, or in this case it would be in the shadow of the ambiguous, ambivalent, unclear, etc. And that's a mistake that is made a lot. And when we do that knowingly, knowing this is the so much, and this is, and we still want that, That's Hawa. That's Hawa. When one, for example, is not a mujtahid, is not an expert scholar, and knows on an issue, and this is of course in the al-hawa al-khafi, of course, except in wahi, but tahrif al-wahi. We have a mujtahid, one or two mujtahids, hafidhahumullah ta'ala, who have understood something ambiguous in one way. And then we have the remaining mujtahidun, expert scholars by the hundreds and thousands, understanding something different and opposite. And I come and see all of that, and I'm not a mujtahid, and see all of that and prefer I incline to the understanding of the two or the three at the expense of the hundreds and the hundreds. And this is most likely if a person, as I said, is not a mujtahid and has some knowledge and some ability to think and reason, etc., that would be a sign of ittiba'ul hawa. And of course, these are examples, but the more obvious example is when sees something, all the scholars are saying one thing, but he or she, because he or she has learned few words here and there, and few equations here and there, and how to count here and there, then says, I don't incline to this. I don't like that interpretation. The way I feel, this interpretation is correct. In this case, I'm giving an example of one who goes alone as a loner against all the expert ulama in matters of deen. I'm not speaking in matters of engineering. In matters of deen, this is ittiba'ul hawa. This is ittiba'ul hawa. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, for example, yadullahi على الجماعة or مع الجماعة ومن شذ في النار والعياذ بالله. The hand of God, the hand of Allah is upon or with the jama'ah, with the group, with the unity, with the body as a whole. Excuse me. ومن شذ, and the one who comes out of this as a shuzuz, as an exception, as an abnormality, and breaks away from that, then that breaking away leads him to hell. You break away on your own way, that way will lead to hell. If one breaks from the al-jama'ah, jama'atul mu'mineen, jama'atul al-ulama al-mujtahideen, for example, if one breaks from the unity of the group of, especially the expert ulama of this ummah, whom Allah Azza wa Jal has willed through His grace for them and honored them to be the protectors and the preservers of His wahy, of His shara, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-ulama'u warathatu al-anbiya, as Rasulullah says. The ulama are the heirs of the anbiya. I don't like to translate Nabi with Prophet. Should have an English word called Nabi. I told you, or some of you, why the reason. We don't go through that. So al-ulama warathatu al-awliya. Al-ulama warathatu al-anbiya. ومن شذ لهذا من شذ عن الجماعة، خاصة جماعة المؤمنين العالمين العارفين، هذا لا شك يشذ في النار والعياذ بالله. A person who pulls away from that type of jama'ah, especially that type of jama'ah, that type of unity, that type of oneness and grouping, as in this case, not as physical persons, but their understanding, their fatawi, their judgment on a specific shari'i issue on account of the expertise granted to them, certainly through their efforts, but by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's what we also wanted to communicate through this, in addition to what we have learned in general. And Hawa is shaytani and Shahwa is hayawani. And you know why by now. Shaitan did exactly that. The way he argued, that's Hawa. Intellectualizing his mistake. Arguing on behalf of his mistake. Legitimizing his mistake. And arguing on behalf of it in some rational, invented, innovated ways, which to the lay or the regular almost makes sense. But in reality it does not. When he says, أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ خَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. This, if we were not believing men and women and the Quran, etc., away from wahi, if we follow our understanding, we will sympathize with that. That's Hawa. Because what he said, I lay myself in sujood, in prostration for Adam, but God, you created. You see the argument? How nice. He didn't say, I am. خلقتني. You created me. Imagine the argument, how it is split, etc. And how arguments sometimes are embellished and adorned in books and in the way it is written and the way it is said, etc. And how some very subtle, venomous argument is made to be sweet and beautiful. So he begins, خلقتني. You Allah, you created me from fire. You created him from clay. In other words, continue, qiyas. This is qiyas ma'al nas. This is reasoning by analogy, however, in the presence of the text that says the opposite. So you would say, well, in other words, fire makes clay, burns clay. You need fire to get the outcome of when you have a jar, you need clay, and then you need fire to burn it, to heat it, and to bake it. Fire dominate. Ya Allah, you made this beautiful way, and you want this to later prostrate to this. As a matter of fact, he didn't say directly, no, I will not lay myself prostrate. He said, أَأَسْجُدُ لِمَنْ خَلَقْتَ طِينًا. Like in a question mark, but intending to be, the negation. Would you want me, in other words? Would I lay myself prostrate too? To someone you created from clay? See the argument? And you can go along. Some even would go and say, how come, Ya Allah, I lay myself prostrate to someone else other than you? This is even more attractive argument. Ya Allah, this is clay. I should lay prostrate only to you. Right? This sounds even much more interesting. And all of you are smiling almost, and you like it. And that's Hawa. Because this is in front of what? Wahi. Wahi said, Usjud. And Hawa, of course, Hawa sometimes adorns and embellishes and, sugarcoats, the argument for the person to, to be entrapped and to convince himself or herself and then to die for that even. That's the shaitan is the most dangerous creature and being because he's the master of following Hawa. And Hawa comes sometimes in very, very, very attractive arguments, attractive to the nafs, not necessarily right arguments. Especially in the face of wahy, the presence of wahy. An example of people following their hawa amongst us nowadays, full hawa, may Allah forgive us, may Allah protect us as we are learning and teaching, may Allah protect us from falling into the trap of shaitan as we speak of this and we are falling into his trap. Ya Rabbi sitrika wa afuk. Says, well, the Quran, the virtues of the Quran and the merits of the Quran are innumerable. They are definitive. They are muhkam. No doubt about it. And of course, the Quran, we love the Quran. It's the word of Allah. And time passes. And then to those of us who say, some of us who say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, and then we're talking and they read the Quran and they cry and they study the Quran and they ponder the Quran and they memorize the Quran. Many of these people actually don't even memorize the Quran. Read the Quran ila ذلك, and then speak of the merits and the virtues of the Quran. The Quran is our Savior, the way, we, etc. And with time, until they tell you, with all of this, when you're involved now emotionally and through some sugar-coated arguments, then the next thing comes. We don't need anything else with the Quran. And then, see, hadith is filled with mawdu' hadith. Sunnah is filled with mawdu', it's filled with da'if. And then what is this sunnah? Somebody says this and then my grandfather this and that says, and the Quran has been preserved, alhamdulillah, for 14 centuries in the hearts and written, etc. The Quran suffices us. We don't need anything else. Yes, the Quran suffices us. We don't need anything else. What does that mean? Well, until it says with the Sunnah, you don't need it. And then until the Sunnah becomes a subject of laughter. And that it is not necessary. هذا هوى. هذه بدعة ضلالة. They still say لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. بدعة ضلالة من أكبر البدع الحقيقية والكلية والعياذ بالله. And this is Hawa. Because the Quran is replete of ayat as understood by the expert ulama of this ummah for uninterrupted 14 centuries of the greatest minds. And the simple Arabs of old who spoke Arabic and who understood Arabic in the most appropriate ways, naturally, they and the scholars, all of them, from the Quran have learned that the Sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ is an authority. وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا, etc. For example, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ إلى غير ذلك وهكذا. And then all of that led us necessarily to listen to what Rasulullah ﷺ says regularly. And then in what he says regularly, he also foretold the coming of such people. He said it 14 centuries ago, that yushiku, there shall come a time soon when one man who says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, in other words, يعني متكئ على أريكته, laying down on his couch, and says, whatever comes to me from Allah in the Quran I accept, anything else I don't. And Rasulullah describing him, this guy laying on his arika. Who began these things? Those who, couch potatoes. They enjoy some luxuries of life, and with time it goes to the head. Sometimes luxury goes to the head, wealth goes to the head, power goes to the head, fame goes to the head of many of us. And when it goes to the head, the person changes and becomes a very Hawa oriented. And what he or she says to him or her and others like them become sacrosanct, become even sacred. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. When it goes to the head. And you hear the example, fame went to his head. Right? You heard the expression? You've heard it or not? I'm asking. I hope I'm not the only one who's claiming I heard it. I know it is said. Yeah, I can give you examples, but I won't. Fame went to his head. Then, and then they get loose. Sometimes wealth and fame and power, goes to the head. And then that's shaitan, of course. And then stirs the concept stirs the energy of Hawa inside to begin argue that which we have an inclination towards. So these are examples of Hawa and more, my dear brothers and sisters. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us all. May Allah help us as we are aware of these things or become aware of these things, that He actually and factually on the ground in our lives protect us. Despite what we know, we might know, but we fall into Hawa. Shaitan knew, but he fell to his Hawa. And Allah didn't want for him other things. We hope that Allah will not forsake us and He will leave us to our own inclinations without saving us, because we all have inclinations. And if it is not Allah Azza wa Jal to save us from that, we will fall like shaitan. Especially those of us who think we're so smart, so intelligent, or so even spiritual, that we rely on that and that we are worthy something. Those sometimes even more, are more prone to fall because of how much we have. And sometimes that type of information is like power, and it blinds us from being aware of our own inclinations, which we give a garb of Shari, rationale and argument, or spiritual rationale and argument. May Allah Azza wa Jal save us. Al-Hawa ya Latif. Ya Latif. Ya Latif. Allah tells us about people, Rasulullah tells us about people who started the first seed started even in his time. That is, believing man and women who say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And that he would say, there shall come from, the progeny of this one, people amongst us who will read the Quran. Read the Quran so much, do ibadah so much, etc., etc. That he says to us, to his companions also, that one of you would belittle his own ibadah in front of theirs. Yeah? And they would read the Quran, however, the Quran, but لا يتجاوز حناجرهم. Literally it says, they would read the Quran, but the Quran does not go beyond their Adam's apple, hunjula, let's say throat. It will not go beyond this one. Meaning what? This is a metaphor, which means what? The Quran doesn't go to the qalb. The Quran is not really properly understood. You know, read it, but لا يجاوز الحنجرة. The meaning of it, they take strange meanings, wrong meanings from the Quran itself, and yet they think they are, and they do practice. And Rasulullah said in many other hadiths that these are not people who come only early. They will come from time to time. From generations to generations, they come. كلما خرج قرن أو كلما كذا قرن ظهر قرن آخر. Every time an aspect of it arises, is brought forth, comes into appearance, and then it is destroyed, another one comes out. Somewhere else, another one comes out. You know. And the first one of those was in his time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he was once, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after some alhamdulillah, some fath, he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, began to distribute the booty amongst those whom he gave. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is distributing. And he gave those, and he gave those, and he gave those. All day he was giving, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Towards the end of the day, a man said, Ya Rasulullah, or Ya Muhammad, Ra'aytu, I have seen what you did today in distributing the booty. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, هذا ما رأيت. What did you see? How did I do? He said, لم تعدل. He said, Ya Latif, you did not do justice. Because he gave those, and he gave those, and he gave those, and probably he didn't give him as much, or didn't give him, etc. Sayyiduna Umar said, Ya Rasulullah, let me. He says, no. He says, ويحك إذا لم أعدل من يعدل. This is Rasulullah. If I do not do justice, who does justice? You know, this is a man. What did he do? What happened here in his mind and in his self? What's going on? Well, that's a word. What's going on? And then we call it Hawa. It is Hawa. Well, what happened? A judgment, right? He looked at what Rasulullah did, and he thought the way he understood, the way he judged, the way he thought it would be done was right, and that was wrong. Now Rasulullah is all the ummah and more. Rasulullah is all the ulama of this ummah and the awliya of this ummah and the anbiya of all the ummah, and all sallallahu alayhi wasallam is one. All the khair of Allah is in him. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So someone saw something that he did not approve of, that he did not like. So instead of, this is not politics, this is deen. Instead of realizing that what I feel, astaghfirullah, one should restrain it, one should hide it, one should repent to Allah from that first impulse of this is wrong, it should not have happened, and therefore accuse my own self. And realize that I am sick, I should not even feel that way. Instead of doing that, on the contrary, he expressed that. to be the norm and the standard. That's Hawa. And he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, leave him. There shall come from this one, the progeny, people who, and he said what he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he said what he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The point is, whatever we call them, and they are called throughout times, that's not as relevant. What is relevant is, what is this characteristic? What is the sifa that made them that way? That's Hawa. What is Hawa in this case? That's how it expressed itself. And Hawa is much more dangerous than Shahwa, as we said. Because Hawa, as a matter of fact, not only destroys the individual, no. Hawa has collective consequences. Sometimes Shahwa has only individual consequence. You know, if I follow my Shahwa of eating, I can harm generally only myself. If I do that with impropriety, I would harm myself, physically or spiritually. If it is haram or so, I would harm myself. It won't go to the others. But Hawa, in this realm of the intellect, of the emotions, not only harms me, of course, but it would harm the collective body as well, because it has consequences. A person who rejects all Sunnah as being a source of knowledge and just Quran, as the Hawa makes it beautiful, this argument of Quran, etc., etc., how attractive. The destruction, the consequences are not only at the level of the individual, but this has terrible consequences in society, in the ummah, of developing more and more people like that, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, who deny a truth that is tested by time, and the truth to which all of the companions of Rasulullah held fast, and to which all the ulama of this ummah, the mujtahidun, have held fast. And then one goes against that. Ya Latif, Ya Latif. Nasallallahu al-afwa wal-afiyah. Nasallallahu al-afwa wal-afiyah. Ayna. Any question? Yes, please. Right. Rational, logical arguments, right. Right, thank you. Jazakallah. First of all, yes, as you said, alhamdulillah, the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah even, of course, are also replete with rational, logical arguments. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah. And He didn't have to do that. He just had to order, and we do khalas. But Allah Azza wa Jal, out of His grace, and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam instructed to do so, often tell us about the arguments and the rationale behind something being good or bad. Yes, of course, and that's what our ulama have always followed also. But when I said that, I said, for example, one follows his own rationale, his own logic, which is not necessarily logical. My own logic does not necessarily mean it is standardized logic. And I can have my logic, my rationale, it makes sense to me, but actually, to the experts, it doesn't make sense. First of all, is that okay? That's a fact. And that's why when I go to school and you go to school and we went to school, and we're learning, and we're learning how to reason, and we're learning to solve problems, especially those who studied math and physics and the sciences, the hardcore sciences that require a lot of evidence and demonstrations and proofs, etc. And you're doing something, and you're arguing one way, even in other sciences, and then you think you did great. You did great. And then your score comes, and you are red and yellow, pale. What do? You just look at it and say, oh yes, I didn't see that. But when you were giving your answer, when you were writing, when you were answering, doing your best, there you were even sincere. There is no Hawa there. You were sincere, but ultimately you were wrong. Your logic was not the right logic. Your rationale was not the right rationale. And that happens a lot, especially in matters which is not mathematics, which is not physics, which is not hard science, in matters that allow for flexibility, matters that have to do with the psyche, with the thought, with the emotions, things that are not like mathematically this way or that way, but they are, we say logically this way or that way. That's one thing, logically meaning outside the hard math or the hard sciences. And we do make mistakes that way. We think we're right, but we're not right. So what is dangerous is to rely on my logic, disregarding the logics of others, number one. And making use of the wisdom of the collective expert intelligence, we put it this way. Yeah. And I rely only, unlike you. And we have that attitude of arrogance sometimes, my view, It's very dangerous to give up the collective wisdom of others, in this case, more specifically, the collective wisdom of the mujtahidun, the expert ulama, the expert scholars. هذه واحدة. So that's what we say. Number two, sometimes those who are like that say they follow their logic. Shaitan follows his logic. We said in the presence of, this is even worse, in the presence of, what did Shaitan do when he said to Allah, when Allah said something to him, أمره أن يسجد, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him to lay himself prostrate to Adam, what was that from Allah? Wahy. You could call it wahy. That's direct communication. That's a text. That's a nas. Definitive in thubut. Definitive in dilala. That's a nas that is definitive in terms of its origin from God. No intermediary. Directly. That's nas. That's text. And the meaning of it is very clear and very obvious. Usjud. And he saw others doing sujood to Adam, the other malaika. So that even if you go, well, what did he mean? Well, they did it, so that's what it means. The acts of the malaika also told him what it exactly means. Just in case he would say, I should not lay prostrate to other than you, God. That the malaika did that. So it's unambiguous, definitive in source origin of it and in the meaning of it. And with that presence, that nas, that text, that clarity, he used his own logic at the expense of the text. That's what leads to disaster. That's Hawa. That's Hawa Jali in this case. This is in this case Hawa Jali, like the first one. That's kufr and shirk wal iyad billah. Sometimes a person accepts the text, alhamdulillah, accepts the wahi, but because of certain internal dynamics inside of him or her, emotionally or psychologically, and background, etc. Because of that, he or she makes the wrong choice deliberately. Not denying the text, but taking the least probable, for example, of the meanings of those texts at the expense of the most likely and most probable of meanings. That's Hawa. And there are many levels of that. Jazakallahu khair. Any other question? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us be of those who do not follow their Hawa. May Allah Azza wa Jal liberate us from whatever Hawa is in us or is left in us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His merciful, benevolent grace subhanahu wa ta'ala, save us from our own personal inclinations, which go at the expense of the wahy of Allah in the Quran, or the expression of the word of Allah Azza wa Jal in the sunnah of His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us reverence and awe and veneration for the Quran and for the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at all levels. And I'm going to say something here. The veneration for the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at all levels, even the da'if. And we have said few things about that before. Even the weak text, not the mawdu', but the weak which is not mawdu'. May Allah give us the ability to show reverence and veneration to that. Because al-hadith al-da'if, when it is weak, it does not mean logically that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did not say it. That's the mawdu'. Logically what it means, what? There is a chance that he did say it. And there is a chance that he did not. But there is a chance that he said it. And for that I have to show veneration. That's why our earliest ulama, rahimahum ta'ala, the experts, like al-Bukhari and Muslim and before them, rahimahullah ta'ala, and like Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and Imam Malik and like Abu Hatim al-Razi, Abdul Rahman ibn al-Mahdi, these great names, and later on the Ibn Khuzaymas, Ibn Hibban, the Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood, Al-Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Imam Shafi'i, etc. These ulama, the hadith weak, they never rejected it in totality. On the contrary, they all held it in reverence because of that possibility and that probability. They would put it aside, but keep watch of it. They would put it aside only if there is what? Another text that is stronger than it. And if there is a text that is stronger than it, that opposes it, khalas, the choice is the stronger text. But in the absence of any text stronger than it, and in the absence of any principle in Sharia against it, and especially in the presence of general principles in favor of it, are you with me? With that, it becomes operational. They use it. Because otherwise they said they would be rejecting the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, even when it is da'if. And that's what Imam al-A'imma did, rahimahullah ta'ala, especially under these circumstances. Ibn al-Madini, rahimahullah ta'ala, mentions to us that one of the greatest minds and ulama and huffaz and fuqaha of his time, and the early masters of this system of textual criticism. He mentioned to us some other Hufaz in his time who rejected the hadith da'if, mursal. Mursali, in the concept of some muhaddithun or many muhaddithun, it is of the kind of da'if, weak. He rejected that in the absence of anything else that necessarily requires that. It was not contradicting anything else. It was simply something that actually warned against doing something. If you did something during this or that day, you might have the risk of developing this or that disease. And that text was, quote unquote, in terms of the apparent analysis of the chain, it was weak. So those who said no, and they ignored it, and they did what the text said you better not do. But it was weak. Subhanallah. And it is on the records. Those two scholars were befallen by that sickness. Did you hear me? Some of you I know will understand this well. Some at different levels. When they ignored that text that was weak, and it was not contradicting any other strong text. And it was a text for actually keeping safe from something. على الأقل احتياطا. And that text was ignored because it was weak and I don't have. Ignore it. And those scholars, they were scholars. Others perhaps did, but did not fall sick. But Allah willed perhaps to. These are ulama who did that. They should not have done that. They should have, by the level of knowledge, developed a spiritual sensitivity that makes them more venerating and more reverent to the possible word of Rasulullah, let alone the actual or definitive word of Rasulullah. And that should be our attitude, my brothers and sisters. This is, at some level, ittiba'ul hawa. For some people, at some level, this is ittiba'ul hawa. And Allah knows who is following his hawa on a specific issue. Maybe that following, disregarding that text, encountered inside of us an inclination, and that inclination, when we found the text weak, we said, ignore it. And ignoring it was not on the basis, if that was not there, on pure rational grounds. It was on that inclination that was there. But when the text was weak, it was brought alive. And it provided me with the energy, negative energy I needed to disregard the text. Are you with me? Sometimes it's just something in my nafs, an inclination. SubhanAllah, we have a saying in Arabic. That says, Sibba, and that's in the North African dialect of Arabic. Sibba walqatha hdura. Sibba walqatha hdura. It would say, Sibba, sabab, reason, and it encountered a downhill road. It encountered a steep slope. In other words, Sibba, there was something inside of me, and it encountered, a downhill road, so it went along because it was there, it was waiting for it to roll down. And that came on its way, so it took the way down. Sometimes that's what we have, lurking, hidden inside, and something comes ambiguous, unclear, and we take it despite its unclarity inside of me. فنسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى العافية. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى الثبات. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى الهدى. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يرفعنا بالوحي وأن لا يخفضنا بالهوى. May Allah Azza wa Jalla, we implore Him to raise us with wahi and adherence to wahi, and not to lower us by the gravitational, heavy, dense pull of our hawa. نسألك اللهم العفو والعافية وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وأصحابه الميامين والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.